Hi and welcome back everyone. Welcome back to a new Black Desert mobile video. Right, so this is a very special video where we will be doing a very special test, right, to answer a very popular question. Right. So the question is, does Labreve, right, does it stack on top, right, of your current existing critical chance, right? So does it stack, right? Say, for example, right here we have 30% critical chance and maximum Labreve of 40%, right? So for those skills that have the Labreve effect, right? So does the 40% stack on top of the critical chance you have, right? So in order to test this out, we will be comparing a before and after, right? So the before will be using spinning slash without the Labreve. We'll do it 30 times divided by 3 different sets, right? So each set will be 10 times of using spinning slash without Labreve. And after will be the same, 3 sets but with Labreve, and then we'll do a quick comparison of the before and after, right? So so you can see that there'll be no editing here, right? So that you can see that this is a very real test, right? Just pure and raw footage. So in order to start the test, right, we are going to use spinning slash because it has Labreve and it has the most charges, as you can see here, right? So that we don't have to wait that long for it to recharge. So to start the test right away, let's turn off the Labreve. Unequipped. So over here we have a few bears, right, or the 2 of them that we will test this out. So let's test on this bear. So that is not a critical hit. So over here it will say no, right? And this is not a critical hit as well. What about this? So that is not a critical hit. This is just using our base 30% critical chance, right? Without the Labreve effect. So that is a critical hit. So is this a critical hit? No, right? So obviously when the damage number appears, that is not a critical hit. And let's wait for it to respond. There we go. So that is not a critical hit. Oops. Yeah, so no, right? So as you can see, this is raw footage. So not a critical hit. And lastly for this set, not a critical hit. Right, so you can see that we only have 1 out of 10 for this set, even though we have 30% critical chance, right? So let's try our second set, shall we? So so over here what we are trying to do is trying to attack them one at a time, so that we can keep track of how many critical hits that we have landed. So that is not a critical hit. And not a critical hit. Not a critical hit. And not a critical hit. What about now? Not a critical hit. And so that is not a critical hit as well, and not a critical hit. So that is not a critical hit as well, and Okay, not a critical hit as well. And okay, lastly you have one critical hit, right? So that is basically 1 out of 10 again. So let's try our final set for the before comparison, right? Oh, okay, so we are trying to hit one at a time, right? So it is easier for us to keep track. Okay, so those two are numbers, right? So that is obviously right 0 out of 2, right? So no and no. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so there we have one critical hit. Okay. Okay, so that is not a critical hit. Okay, and not a critical hit. Okay, so that is a critical hit, yeah. Okay, so that is not a critical hit. And not a critical hit. Okay, so the numbers appeared, so not a critical hit. Oh, okay, there we have it. Okay, one critical hit, or rather the third critical hit. Right, so over here, right, it is very obvious that, right, okay, without the Labreve turn on, right, okay, it is possible for you to get, right, only one critical hit out of 10. Okay, but it is also possible for you to get 3 critical hits out of 10 times of using, for example, spinning slash. Right, so even though right here we have 30% critical chance, right, it doesn't mean that every 10 times you use, for example, in this case, spinning slash, right, you are guaranteed 3 out of 10 every time, right? So this is essentially still based on a percentage chance. So at its core, still RNG, right? Okay, but okay, let's move on to using Labreve. Okay, to turn on the Labreve skill effect. Okay, so let's go over to our skills menu and let's turn this on to test the before and after. So now that our Labreve is turned on, okay, let's start with the first set. Okay, so we have a bear here. Okay, let's try this out. So that is not a critical hit. Okay, and okay, no, not a critical hit as well. What about this? Okay, so we have our first critical hit of this set. Okay, let's try this. Not a critical hit. Okay, what about this? Okay, so that is not a critical hit as well. Okay, let's try this. Alright, not a critical hit as well. Okay, what about this? Okay, so that is not a critical. So that was not critical at all. Right, what about this? No. Okay, so there we have it. The second critical hit. Okay, and not a critical hit, right? So that is 2 out of 10, right? Which is very bad actually. Okay, but okay, let's test more. Let's move on to our second set. So not a critical hit. No. And let's try this again. Okay, not a critical hit. Okay, so that is a critical hit. Right, so once again, remember that we are using Labreve here. Okay. Okay, so not a critical hit. And okay, there we have another critical hit. right? Not a critical hit, and not a critical hit. Okay, not a critical hit, and not a critical hit. And lastly for this set, not a critical hit. Okay, so let's try our final set. Okay, so that is not a critical hit. Okay, we have one critical now. And not a critical hit. Okay, and not a critical hit. Okay, one critical hit. Two critical hits already. And that's our third critical hit. Okay, so no, not a critical hit. Okay, another critical hit. Okay, and another critical hit. Okay, and not a critical hit. Okay, so from these three sets, right? Okay, so this final set here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is 5 out of 10, right? So that is 50%, right? So you can see the before and after comparison, right? It is very obvious that, right? If you use Labreve, right? If you turn on Labreve, right, for the skills that have the branch, right, it is possible for you to land more critical hits, right, well above the cap, right. So as you can see from this Excel sheet, right, 5 out of 10 and 1 out of 10. So this means that, right, it is possible for you to have bad luck and only land 1 out of 10, 1 critical out of 10 skill attacks, but right, it is also possible for you to get at least, okay, in a good range, 5 out of 10, right? So this is, right, the results here, right, is based on a very small data size, right? Because earlier today, okay, we have actually tested this out previously, and okay, most of the time it is around 4 to 6 out of 10 per set, right? Even with Labreve. Okay, but once in a long while, it is possible to get 7 out of 10, okay, on very good days, right? So, right, this is very obvious, and right, it already shows that your critical chance, right, does, or rather, okay, the Labreve branch here, right, 40% or whatever percentage that you have, does indeed stack with critical chance, right? Right, but right, it is possible for you to land very little, right? As you can see here, critical hits even with Labreve turn on, right? Because right, everything here, right, critical itself, the core concept of it is based on a chance, right? So that doesn't mean that even if they do stack, rather, right, in this case we have already proven that they do stack, but you can get this, but you can also get this, right? So if anyone asks you this question, right, does Labreve stack on top of your critical chance, right, show them this video, okay? Yeah, so I hope that this small little test, okay, will be helpful to you, okay? And if you like this video, right, remember to share, like, and subscribe. And as usual, stay awesome.